Russia built a secret army designed to be invisible. Google Translate is what caught it. 500 operatives, no military records, no traceable passports, hidden on the payroll of the company that makes the AK-47, run out of a 2-story office block outside Moscow, bankrolled by a billionaire arms dealer. 3 years and millions of dollars spent making these men disappear on paper. Then 2 of them sat down to plan a murder. One typed in Russian, the other typed in Serbian. And to understand each other, they pasted the whole thing into a free translation app running on a server in California. And the FBI read every word. Hey there everyone, and welcome back to The Domino Effect, the channel where we map the wars, the weapons, and the power struggles shaping our world, one falling domino at a time. Last time out, we mapped the people circling Putin's chair. This one goes underneath that, into the machinery that these people reach for when they want somebody dead in another country. And I had to read this one twice. Because the flaw at the center of this story isn't a traitor, and it isn't a hack. It's a language barrier. What I want you to watch for is the order things fall in, because this is not one mistake. It's 6 of them, stacked up over the better part of a decade, each one leaning on the one behind it. The translation app is the least interesting domino in the row, so stay with me here. To understand why Russia built this thing, you need to understand the unit it was built to replace. Unit 29155. If you follow European security news at all, you've seen its work without necessarily seeing its name. The nerve agent attack in Salisbury in 2018 that poisoned Sergei and Yulia Skripal and killed a British woman who had nothing to do with any of it. A coup attempt in Montenegro. A run of unexplained explosions at ammunition depots across Eastern Europe. This was the GRU's Expeditionary Sabotage and Assassination Unit, and for a while, it was very good at what it did. Then, investigative journalists took it apart, and the way they did it should worry anybody whose job involves not being found. The GRU had issued its officers cover passports in sequential batches, consecutive numbers. Once reporters spotted the pattern in one document, the rest of the roster unspooled from it. Because the whole point of a series is that it tells you what comes next. Names, photographs, travel records, biometrics, sitting in customers' databases across Europe. One internal Russian assessment reportedly described the unit in a single blunt word: liability. Note what actually killed them, not enemy brilliance. An administrative shortcut in a passport office, made by somebody who was never going to be blamed for it. That's Domino 1, and it fell 4 years before the unit in this story existed. Moscow's answer was not to fix 29155, it was to build a competitor. According to the joint investigation by the Insider and Der Spiegel, the order came down from the Russian General Staff in December 2022, 10 months into the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. On paper, it created Military Unit 75127, a number recycled from a defunct formation once stationed near the Chinese border. Internally, it was called Center 795, and the design brief reads like a list of everything 29155 got wrong. It sat outside the GRU's command chain entirely, answering directly to the Chief of the General Staff, Valery Gerasimov. It was given what Russian planners call a full cycle mandate, a tidy way of saying one command handling the entire pipeline: intelligence collection, agent recruitment, surveillance, sabotage, and, when required, killing people. No borrowing from other agencies, no paperwork moving between departments where paperwork can be read. It could also poach officers from the GRU, the FSB, even the service that guards Putin himself, reportedly without the parent agency's consent, which tells you where it sat in the pecking order. By the middle of 2023, it was fully staffed, around 500 officers. Which raises the problem this entire story turns on. Where do you park 500 elite operatives so that no journalist, no foreign service, no customs officer ever notices 500 men appearing out of nowhere? You need somewhere big enough that they vanish into the noise. They chose the company that makes the AK-47. Center 795 was reportedly embedded inside the Kalashnikov Concern. Operatives went into the payroll as civilian employees of an arms manufacturer. Their base was an administrative building at Patriot Park in Kubinka outside Moscow, a military-industrial complex where Kalashnikov already had a perfectly legitimate presence. Live fire training was logged as product testing, which for a rifle company is the least suspicious paperwork imaginable. It is, I have to admit, kind of elegant. A soldier on a firing range is a soldier. A soldier on a firing range with a Kalashnikov employee badge is quality control. The money reportedly ran through the same trick. The investigation names Andrei Bokarev, a billionaire best known as a controlling figure in the Transmashholding, one of Russia's largest rail and defense conglomerates. In 2014, he and a partner acquired a controlling stake in Kalashnikov. In 2018, with Western sanctions closing in, he appeared to sell out. Investigators say the money says otherwise. Tax declarations from 2019 through 2021 reportedly show Kalashnikov income still arriving. If that structure feels familiar, it should. It is the Wagner model. Yevgeny Prigozhin funded a private army out of catering contracts. Here, according to the investigation, state contracts to Kalashnikov and Transmashholding are padded, and the padding flows into Center 795. The state pays for everything and owns none of it. The third name in the room is Sergei Chemezov, who runs Rostec, Russia's state arms giant, served alongside Putin in Dresden in the 1980s, and is one of the very few people in Moscow who does not need an appointment. A private army, corporate camouflage, oligarch financing, deniability all the way up. Hiding them inside a rifle company is domino too, and at the time, it looked ingenious. To run the unit, that circle of generals and businessmen picked Denis Fisenko, 52, veteran of the FSB's Alpha unit, 3-time recipient of the Order of Courage, national champion in combat shooting, author of an FSB training manual. In 2018, he was photographed teaching Vladimir Putin to shoot a sniper rifle at Patriot Park. Between 2019 and 2023, he was a senior executive at Kalashnikov, running its drone division. He understood both halves of the job, commando structure, corporate cover. And to bring his Kremlin sponsors on it, he built a PowerPoint. Now sit on that for a second. The most secretive military formation Russia had ever assembled, and its founding pitch is a slide deck. Organization charts, personnel projections, growth curves, little icons of tanks and drones, color-coded by directorate. Indistinguishable from any other Kalashnikov board presentation, which was, of course, the entire idea. Then Ukrainian hackers went looking through Kalashnikov's systems for drone manufacturing data. They found the deck instead. Structure, staffing, weapons, ambitions, laid out in clean corporate branding on slides that were never supposed to leave the building. Within months, it had reached Western intelligence services and the journalists who eventually published all of this. The thing built to hide them is the thing that documented them. Domino 3, and it fell before Center 795 ever ran an operation abroad. So, what was on those slides? 3 directorates: intelligence, assault, combat support. Of 535 candidates put through psychological testing, polygraphs, and interviews, roughly a third were rejected. Department heads reportedly earned around $8,000 a month, which in the Russian Secret Service buys you the best people and the resentment of everybody who didn't get in. The Intelligence Directorate ran 9 departments: open source monitoring, satellite imagery, signals interception, drone reconnaissance. Its network of human agents abroad was staffed largely by veterans of Unit 29155, the same men who had already been burned once. 3 ground surveillance teams, equipped identically so any one of them could run an operation without the other 2 knowing it existed. And Department 19, the snipers. Here is the detail that tells you what this unit was for, and it's a filing decision. The sniper department does not sit in the assault directorate alongside the strike teams. It sits inside intelligence, next to the surveillance units. Snipers used for battlefield support get filed with the fighters. Snipers filed with the watchers are for something else. Nobody had to write the word down. The organizational chart says it out loud. There was one more design principle, and it is the smartest thing on the slides. The leadership was recruited to have no Russian footprint at all. Fisenko's chief of staff, Dmitry Drozdov, served in an Alpha unit, but Belarus's KGB, not Russia's. He left around 2017, moved through the corporate world, arrived at Kalashnikov as a civilian, and joined Center 795 in 2023. The head of the Intelligence Directorate, Sergei Radevich, followed an almost identical path out of the same Belarusian service. The logic is sound. Western counterintelligence knows which Russian names to watch. It was not watching Belarusian officers who had apparently gone into business years earlier. And then they hired Alexei Ilyushin, 4 languages including Danish and Norwegian, author of military academy textbooks, architect of the GRU University recruitment program, a CV written to impress a boss. It belonged to a man who had already been caught. In 2014, posted to the Russian embassy in Paris, he was detected by French intelligence attempting to buy compromising material on someone close to President Hollande, and he was expelled. They put a publicly burned officer into the leadership of a unit whose entire purpose was not being publicly known, which brings us to the man in the handcuffs. Denis Alimov, 42, riot police in Stavropol in the early 2000s, then the FSB's Special Purpose Center. He was registered at a facility in Balashikha, used, according to the investigation, by Vadim Krasikov, before he shot a Chechen dissident dead in a Berlin park in 2019. Alimov's first year at Center 795 was spent on errands, tracking down a relative of Ramzan Kadyrov, who had gone missing in Moscow, clearing cargo shipments, passing along tips from old FSB colleagues. By 2024, the job had changed. He was building a recruitment pipeline out of Chechens he had personally put in prison on terrorism charges. Men with sentences hanging over them who could be pressed into cooperation and who could then walk into Europe presenting themselves as refugees fleeing Russian persecution. At least one of them got a foreign passport, walked out of jail, and left for Istanbul. And by late 2024, Alimov had a target list. At the top, Ahmed Zakayev, the exiled prime minister of the unrecognized Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, one of the most visible Chechen voices against both Kadyrov and the Kremlin. The price on him, according to the investigation, was $1.5 million, dead or delivered back to Russia alive. A second Chechen dissident in Europe carried the same price, and a third target, unnamed in the indictment and unnamed in the investigation, carried a bounty of $10 million. Those numbers are not normal. Organized crime does not pay $1.5 million for a contract killing. $10 million is not a market price. It's a statement about who the target is. Hey, if you want more of these, the units, the money, the paper trails behind the headlines, subscribe to the Domino Effect. We map one of these every week. Now, back to the part where the whole thing comes apart. Because a bounty is useless without somebody to collect it, and this is where Center 795's greatest strength turned into the crack that ran through all of it. Every operative in that unit was Russian. After February 2022, a Russian passport moving repeatedly between European cities is not cover, it's a flare. So Alimov needed someone who could cross borders in Europe without anybody looking twice. He found Darko Durovic, a Montenegrin citizen living in the United States and a former national MMA champion. That last detail matters more than it sounds. Combat sport gyms in the Caucasus have long been recruiting grounds for both the Russian security services and Chechen armed networks, and that circuit is the likeliest place their paths first crossed. Reaching outside the unit for a man it could not fully control? That's Domino 4. Durovic traveled to Moscow twice in 2024, both trips laundered as holidays to Turkey. At the second meeting, in October, at a restaurant a short walk from FSB headquarters, Alimov handed him $60,000 in cash as a down payment. Durovic was so pleased with the bag of money that he photographed it and emailed the picture to his friend. Every time he flew back into the United States, FBI agents were waiting with the same question. Had he been to Russia? Every time, he said no, he had been on a holiday in Turkey. They already had his flight records, and they let him walk out of the airport anyway, because a liar you understand is more useful than a liar in custody. Now, Center 795 had genuinely thought about communications security, encrypted messages, burner phones, cover names only, never real ones, compartmentalized so that a blown cell could not burn the others. On the technical merits, it was the hardest covert structure Russia had ever fielded. Nobody had thought about one thing sitting in plain sight. Alimov typed in Russian. Durovic typed in Serbian. Neither man could read the other. So, Durovic wrote his surveillance reports in Serbian, ran them through Google Translate, and sent the Russian output over an encrypted messenger. Makes sense, right? Alimov sent instructions back in Russian, and Durovic pasted those into Google Translate to read them. The encryption held perfectly. It was never touched. But Google's servers sit in the United States, which puts everything typed into that box within reach of an American court order. And the FBI, already suspicious of the man who kept lying about Turkey, went and got one. From that point on, agents were reading the murder-for-hire operation in near real time. Instructions, surveillance reports, target locations. Already translated, already transcribed. A source close to the investigation described it to the insider as better than a wiretap because it arrived transcribed. The indictment quotes the logs. In November 2024, Durovic reporting that he could not confirm a target's whereabouts in New York and would resume the search around December 20th. Hey, that's my birthday. Earlier that month, searches for Glock pistol models and where to buy one in Podgorica. On December 19th, a description of the second target's home. A white villa near the sea, white fence, an Islamic symbol on the gate. Every one of those messages was written by a man who believed he was invisible. That's Domino 5, and here is what I think people got wrong about it. This was not stupidity. It was convenience, which is far more dangerous, really, because convenience never feels like a decision. Nobody sat down and chose to route an assassination plot through a California data center. Two men needed to talk, and they reached for the nearest thing that worked. In March 2025, the FBI arrested Durovic, but he was the contractor, not the architect. So they waited. 11 months, building the case out of his devices, his statements, and the translation logs, while the man who wrote the instructions sat in Moscow, where no warrant could reach him. Alimov had to leave Russia. That was the only way this ended. And on February 23, 2026, defender of the Fatherland Day, which is either coincidence or a very poor sense of occasion, he booked a one-way ticket from Moscow to Colombia via Istanbul. He traveled under a cover identity the FBI had identified months earlier. Reportedly, he bought a burner phone the day before he flew, as though a fresh handset could undo a year of transcripts. The moment that passport number was scanned onto a flight, an Interpol red notice went out. The warrant became public while he was still in the air. There was nothing he could do, nowhere to divert to, and no way to know about it. On February 24, 2026, Denis Alimov walked into arrivals at El Dorado International Airport in Bogota with a light carry-on and a beach hotel booked in Cartagena, and Colombian officers put him in handcuffs. The U.S. Justice Department charged him with conspiracy to murder or kidnap two dissidents abroad, plus terrorism financing and material support offenses. The murder and kidnapping count alone carries a potential life sentence. He was held in Colombian custody pending extradition to New York. That is the sixth domino. But it is not the damage. The damage is that Center 795's entire architecture is now written down in places Russia cannot reach. Its embedding in Kalashnikov, its base at Patriot Park, its financing, its commanders, by name. That material sits in a New York court file and in a published investigation, and none of it can be unfiled. Intercepted communications reportedly suggest Moscow has concluded the unit is finished. Christo Grozhev, one of the investigators, quotes a source inside Russian intelligence responding to all this with a shrug. They will simply build another one, and they are used to the ones you burn down. He is probably right. Since 29-155 collapsed, this is at least the second attempt to build a replacement that can operate below the threshold of Western visibility, and both failed on the same thing. Not the sophistication of their opponents, the convenience-seeking of their own people, which is the part I keep coming back to, and it is bigger than Russia. Every intelligence service on Earth now faces the same problem. You can forge a passport. You can build a legend, a job history, a decade of plausible life. What you cannot do is stop a human being from taking the easy option when they're tired and the deadline is close. And in 2026, almost every easy option is a service that logs what you typed on a server in a jurisdiction that is not yours. The plot failed. Zakhaev was never touched, neither was the second target. Not because Russia's operatives were incompetent, but because two of them could not read each other's messages, and the tool that fixed it kept a copy. Russia will build another unit. It will be better designed than this one, and it will be undone by something equally ordinary that nobody thought to write into the protocol. So here's what I want from you in the comments. What is that boring everyday thing that's going to bring the next one down? Not the hack, not the defector, the mundane convenience that no one's thinking about. I'm going to keep watching this one because the extradition fight is not over, and Moscow has every reason to make it slow. I'll see you when the next domino falls.